All right, let's dive into a story I came across that is just fascinating and frankly pretty cynical. It's all about corporate AI strategy. But this isn't really about the tech. It's about something we could call AI investment theater, a performance really for an audience of executives and investors. So, where does a story like this start? It always starts with a number. And in this case, that number is $1.4 million per year. That was the price tag to give about 4,000 employees Microsoft Copilot. That's a serious chunk of change, no matter how you slice it. So, how in the world do you get a number like that approved? Well, you dress it up in the perfect buzzword. The person pushing this project, they called it digital transformation. And of course, the board absolutely loved the sound of that. And this, right here, is where the show really begins. The whole thing got approved in just 11 minutes. But here's the absolute kicker. Not one single person, not the board, not the executives, not even the person telling the story, bothered to ask what this very expensive new tool was actually supposed to do. Okay, so let's break this down. This is Act 1 of our little corporate drama. We'll call it the digital transformation play. And it's a story you've probably seen before. It's all about the massive, massive gap between what's promised and what actually happens. The promise they made was so simple, so powerful, and just vague enough to work. 10x productivity. Now, the narrator is totally open about this. It's not a real number. It just sounds like one. It's the kind of big, impressive metric that makes people nod their heads and stops them from asking any tough questions. So 3 months go by. The results are in, and oh boy, they are bleak. Out of 4,000 employees, only 47 even bothered to open the tool. Just 12 people, that's 0.3%, used it more than once. The vast majority never even clicked on it. So you'd think, okay, catastrophic failure, project's dead, right? Wrong. In what has to be an Olympic-level feat of corporate spin, this absolute disaster was officially labeled a pilot success. And that brings us to the next chapter in this playbook, manufacturing success with metrics. You see, if the real numbers don't tell the story you like, it's pretty simple. You just invent new numbers. There's only one rule. The graph has to go up and to the right. Always. So how on earth could that be called a success? Well, it's easy when you just redefine the word. In this universe, success isn't about hitting your goals. It's simply about not failing so spectacularly that everyone notices. The bar is pretty much on the floor. You know, eventually, the money people are going to come asking questions. The chief financial officer wanted to know about the return on that $1 million investment. Perfectly reasonable question. The answer he got wasn't a spreadsheet or a report. Nope, it was just a graph. And here it is. This is the actual graph they showed the CFO. The metric? Something called an AI enablement score, which is a totally made-up concept. But look, it has one job: to show progress. Quarter 1, it was low. Quarter 2, medium. Quarter 3, high. The CFO just nodded, and that was it. Meeting over. So what's the grand prize for this whole performance? The company can now officially say it's AI-enabled. It's a powerful, modern-sounding phrase that means absolutely nothing in practice, but you better believe it looks fantastic in the investor deck. So once you've secured your internal win, it's time for the next act, the public relations myth. This is all about taking that story you invented inside the company and turning it into a triumph for the whole world to see. But, you know, not everyone was buying it. There's always one, right? A senior developer started asking some really smart, really practical questions. Why are we using this tool? What does enterprise grade actually mean? And every single valid question was just hit with a brick wall of more buzzwords. It was a conversation that went nowhere. So what happens to the person who won't stop asking logical questions? Well, they get handled. The developer was scheduled for a career development conversation, which, as we all know, is corporate code for shut up or you're out. Problem solved. Okay, so with nobody left to ask questions, it was time for the big PR move. The narrator went to Microsoft's case study team and told them the company had saved 40,000 hours. And the math behind this? Well, it's brutally simple. You just make it up. 'Cause hey, they never check. And you know what? It worked. It works like a charm. This completely made-up number became the actual headline of a Microsoft success story. The company's own CEO shared it on LinkedIn. It got thousands of likes. And just like that, the myth became real. And that brings us to the final and maybe most brilliant act of this whole performance, the art of doubling down. When a lie works this well, you don't just sit back and enjoy it. No, you use that fake success to ask for even more money. So what's the next play? Ask for 5,000 more licenses, even though the first 4,000 are collecting dust. The plan is to drive adoption with mandatory training. But here's the trick. The training doesn't matter. What matters is the completion rate of the training. That becomes a new metric for a new dashboard, for a new presentation, which all leads, of course, to a promotion. And here it is, the whole cynical logic laid out perfectly. A pointless training webinar exists only to create a completion metric. That metric only exists to fill up a dashboard. That dashboard only exists to look good in a presentation, and that presentation exists to get someone a promotion. It's a perfect closed loop. So after all of this, the wasted money, the fake data, the PR spin, you have to step back and ask a really basic question. What is this all for? What is the actual point of all this investment theater? To get the answer, you kind of have to learn a new language. In this corporate play, the word investment doesn't mean what you think it means. It's not about a strategic move for a future return. No, it just means the act of spending money. That's it. And it all boils down to this one hollow equation at the very heart of the story. Spending money proves you're committed, and being committed proves you're serious about the future. Whether you actually accomplish anything, totally, completely irrelevant. Which leaves us with the narrator's final provocative thought. It's a pretty powerful summary of a world where the appearance of progress, that beautiful graph always going up and to the right, is worth so much more than progress itself.